Welcome to our February 2022 CannaCareers module. This is our second midterm review session. We'll be going over the past four CannaCareers modules that we've hosted. Those are our Module 6, which was hemp and cannabis, Module 7, an overview of ancillary opportunities in cannabis, Modules 8 and 9, which were marketing and human resources in cannabis, respectively. So thank you to everyone joining us here today. We're excited. Can we move on to the next slide, Ashley? Thank you. A little bit about us, Women of Color in Cannabis. We are a 501c3 run entirely by women of color. We're based in New York City, and we aim to help marginalized folks all over the country get their footing in the legal cannabis industry by providing education and support. In respect of, in terms of the education and support that we are currently providing, this is our CannaCareers program, which is focused on gainful employment in the cannabis industry and creating and supporting safe spaces. We know that those are a little bit more difficult to come by than they should be. So that's part of the work that we're doing here. To that end, we have our partners and speakers from our past Canna sessions joining us here today to talk to us a little bit more about their experience and about the different kinds of job opportunities in those four sectors that I referenced earlier. Our speaker, Muna, who is a DEI and brand strategist and a marketing expert extraordinaire here in the cannabis industry. She will be speaking to her experience with us today. We also have our partners, Ashley Boucher and Daniel Schumacher from Quality Control Analytics and THC Staffing, respectively. They are our CannaCareers partners helping bring this program and these services to life for us and for you, for our community. And they will all be talking a little bit more about job opportunities here in cannabis. I'll let them take it from here. Ashley, if you'd like to get us started.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. This is actually our first CannaCareers presentation of the year. So I'm super excited about that. A great way to kick off CannaCareers for the 2022 year. We're going to take this opportunity to kind of review the last few sessions that we did last year. We're going to talk about some of the ancillary opportunities in the cannabis industry. We'll review possible CBD and hemp career opportunities, some of the other ancillary opportunities for like marketing and HR. And then we'll talk about finding, applying, and interviewing for these roles. To start off, CBD versus THC, right? When we talk about opportunities in hemp, we're actually talking about CBD, right? We're not talking about THC. And what the real big difference here is actually really how they're regulated and how these industries are regulated. THC and plants that contain high amounts of THC, greater than 0.3% of THC, those will be considered your marijuana plants. Of course, we're pushing to stop referring to any cannabis as marijuana, but that's what our regulators will see. So when you're looking for opportunities and you see the term marijuana used in those regulations, they're referring to high THC types of cannabis. That's regulated on the state level. Although CBD and hemp plants may be regulated on the state level, those are actually considered legal federally, and they're governed by more of the agricultural sector. So we see there's a difference there. And so that's where, when we're talking about hemp and CBD opportunities, we're talking about plants that contain a very low amount of THC. And Muna, do you have anything you want to add to that when we're just really identifying the differences between CBD and THC in reference to how we're finding jobs and how those industries may be regulated?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered it all. The main thing, I guess, colloquially, when you're looking for jobs or talking to folks, is for like the plant touching versus non-plant touching. Of course, CBD, like they all come from the same plant, but the idea of plant touching means it's highly regulated. Asha was saying, that's usually where like the word marijuana comes in, and it becomes state versus federal versus non-plant touching, which means like you don't. There are some CBD products that may have little to no THC that you won't be touching, like THC or weed, as you would call it, in that role, or even sometimes at the entire company or at that brand. So it's really the one of the big things to know colloquially, or just looking for those key terminology.
I'd like to also point out, if I could quickly, that for hemp that has or seems to have more varied uses, we're not extracting THC from that material. We're extracting sometimes CBD, but also hemp is used for textiles, for rope, for concrete, for paper, for food. You know, they're being farmed as high omega-3 foods, like high fatty acid and omega-3 rich foods. So the types of jobs, which is a great segue into what we're going to cover next, is a little bit more expansive. The types of things you'll be doing at your job, so the types of products you'll be touching and making and dealing with when you're talking about hemp specifically might be more varied than what you'd expect when you're talking about the legal weed industry.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sammy. The plant in itself, I always like to say, if I was left with one plant, it would be the cannabis plant, right? Because you can make your food, your medicine, your clothes, your house. You can make anything really from the plant. And with that, yes, right. And I completely forgot about all of those other amazing uses that we do see in the industry. And we do see, there are a lot of hemp fabrics and hemp clothes and hemp oil, hemp seeds. Yeah, people are eating hemp seeds or, consuming that because it's a superfood. It has great nutritional value. So we're really not only limited to, using CBD or using THC, but the hemp plant does have, there are so many uses. And because there are so many uses, there are potential for job opportunities when working with hemp. Of course, some of those more manufacturing jobs, manufacturing textiles, and even seeing in some of, your food, you don't see as many job opportunities in those sectors as you would see in the extraction processes or the cultivation of the plants themselves. Muna, do you have any insight into some of the opportunities that you've seen for CBD or working with hemp? And we're talking about, CBD and hemp and not necessarily high THC types of cannabis that are highly regulated on the state level.
Yeah, and you both mentioned, manufacturing and the food aspect of it, but one industry or one sector that I see a lot in that I have, that my experience falls into is like beauty and fashion. I mean, you walk into Sephora and half the products there, have CBD as a main ingredient, or even that's what the brand is built for. And even the fashion industry, as you were mentioning with, hemp fabric, there's so many opportunities to be in the CBD or hemp space without it actually being like a CBD or hemp brand first. It may be a beauty brand first or a fashion brand first. So there's a lot of opportunities across sectors or across industries, because there are a lot of companies and founders who are realizing the value and the multi uses of CBD and hemp. So really it could touch any and everything.
Yes, that's awesome. And with some of these job opportunities, though, do you think that we're seeing more, CBD or hemp opportunities at the entry level? Are we seeing an increase in mid and senior level opportunities? Or do you think they're primarily still, if you're getting into the cultivation, manufacturing, or even in the beauty industry, are we seeing an increase or growth of like the mid-level and high level or senior level job opportunities?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I could say the growth for a specific managerial level or entry level versus senior level, but I do know that there is an increase in what people are viewing as transferable skills. So a lot of industries, like being junior level or entry level versus mid-level versus senior level, is usually how much time you spend in that industry. But because when you think of like the grand scheme of industries or sectors, CBD and hemp is relatively new for commercial brands or commercial companies, and that like we've said so many times, it's so universal that that you can really be new to CBD or new to hemp at the industry, but not maybe new in that type of role. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities at any level within the industry, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you've had a career, in manufacturing that's not CBD or hemp related, that you can't still have that same level of job opportunity in the CBD hemp industry. So I think that's the biggest shift or change that I've noticed, is really that your experience level within the industry, the CBD or hemp industry, is less relevant to what kind of role you can get, because there are so many companies that are seeing the value of transferable skills from other sectors.
All right, Sammy, did you want to add?
I did just really quickly want to add that as with any new burgeoning industry, you can look to other industry parallels to sort of see like, oh, this might kind of be the way it works, right? So when we talk about the THC side, which is like really, really highly regulated and is treated like a drug, you look at something like the pharmaceutical industry, or look at something like the alcohol industry. But when we're talking about hemp specifically and its myriad uses, I think breaking those down and comparing them to their sort of niche sectors in other places, I think that would be a useful starting point for us when we're thinking about what kind of jobs could I possibly be looking for if I want to work with hemp. I think the other thing that we want to consider is that as the hemp industry grows and as CBD becomes more prevalent and more popular, we're going to start to see a growth of an influx of new companies that are just starting out, who will need things like, they'll need entry-level help like an assistant, they'll need marketing, accounting, HR, they'll need all of these ancillary services and all of these other sorts of operational roles to be filled. And that's another great place to be looking. That's another great way to consider, how do I get my foot in the door of this industry if I want to work with this plant? At least I think.
Yeah. I think that, and I think you made a really great point there. It's CBD and hemp companies, they operate like other businesses, right? Other cultivation businesses. It's like similar to cultivating food in the agricultural industry or manufacturing. They're manufacturing just like another manufacturing company would. Research and development, opportunities will exist to bring new products to the market in, even when we're talking about either infused goods, but also like in the beauty sector. So there will be, these businesses are going to operate pretty much like any other business. And I see CBD and hemp companies and our high THC companies there, although they're regulated by two different agencies, they very much mirror each other. And so there are a wide variety of opportunities, right? Cultivation, and that's the one I usually think of when I think of like CBD or hemp or cannabis. Oh yeah, we're cultivating the plants. And then there's also manufacturing, right? What happens post-processing? And as Sammy alluded to earlier, there are so many different avenues that plant can take. You can produce, use that fiber to produce other products like clothing and rope. Most often when we think of manufacturing, we think of like the extraction process and working in a lab and with extraction equipment to pull that CBD from the plant material. Infused good opportunities. You might be infusing tinctures or infusing beauty products. So there are opportunities in that avenue. And as I mentioned, research and development. So there are like, and then sales, right? Actually selling the product and retail opportunities. So there's a variety of different opportunities that do currently exist when we think about CBD and hemp. So it's not, you're not just stuck in one little sector like cultivation. You have a myriad of opportunities to really get into the industry if you are interested in the CBD or hemp side.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to add, actually, that Sammy, you brought up, and it made me think of this. I've been thinking about being in regulated industries, and and kind of using that to mirror CBD and hemp. A little caveat, I guess, to what we've been talking about, I've been saying before, is that also, as CBD and hemp become even more popular and there's new companies popping up, it's important to understand that for a lot of startups, investor-backed companies, when they're small, those are the kind of companies that may be looking for more senior or experienced folks, and that may not necessarily be within CBD or hemp, but just experienced in their field, because they're building a business from the ground up. Usually the trajectory looks a lot different. Their expectations and requirements from their investors are a little bit different. So there may be a company that you've had your eye on or that you're looking at, and they're really small, and that as they grow, you'd be interested in them. There may not be as many opportunities for a role as there are with maybe more established or larger company. That being said, though, because they're building from the ground up and they're looking for people with experience, it's not always that you have to be, the sales expert, the marketing expert. If you have experience in a similarly regulated industry, that is incredibly valuable. So we talk about THC versus CBD. That's very different in how they're, or high CBD or high THC and how they're regulated. So when you think about CBD and similarly like regulated but still, legal, you think of if you worked at like a nutrition company. So I really got the chance to work on a project that was transferred to cannabis, because I was working with a client that they are a superfood product. They have claims and they have benefits, but like what you can and can't say in your ads versus social media versus, in the product descriptions. So even that experience of knowing, what the regulations are, just how to transfer information from, what you're building and what you're doing to the consumer in a way that abides by guidelines, even if it's not CBD or hemp related or THC in the sphere of cannabis, that experience can be highly valuable. So when thinking about, this is going to be a theme for the entire session, just when thinking about CBD, hemp, and ancillary opportunities, they're like, the world is your oyster. There's so many different ways that you can bring value and transfer any skills or experience you have already, or any interest that you have in the industry to what you will end up doing.
Yes, look for opportunities in compliance. That's what my ears were ringing. Compliance. But yeah, there are a lot of opportunities, and compliance could be one of those. And what you can and cannot say in your marketing, the claims that you can make about the therapeutic values of the plant or the products. And one other really big difference when we're thinking about CBD and versus THC, or hemp versus high THC cannabis plants, is the age restrictions. Oftentimes when working with high THC types of cannabis, the state will require that an individual is 21 years of age or older in order to enter into the industry. CBD may not face those same age restrictions. So individuals looking to enter into the industry may be able to enter in to the hemp industry at a younger age than you would in your high THC industries. And as you were saying, there are so many different ways to get your hands in the cannabis industry without necessarily touching the plant, right? And those would be considered our ancillary opportunities. I think this is where you specialize in the ancillary sort of role in the industry. I'm in a weird place. I'm regulated by the State Cannabis Commission, but I don't actually touch any plants in my in my role, I really focus on education, but I'm regulated by the state agency. So I'm like ancillary-ish type in the role that I play. But when we're talking about the ancillary opportunities, we're talking about non-plant touching. And so because we're talking about, some of these non-plant touching roles, regulations can vary for these companies. Some don't really have that strict regulatory framework, but we still have to be aware of the regulations because I think, and where you play a really key role in marketing, right? We can't just market and say whatever we want about products when we're thinking about marketing. So compliance will rule a lot of any role you really play in the industry. But job opportunities for some of our ancillary roles, particularly in marketing, are we seeing that there's an increase for the need in marketers in the for companies that might be working with cannabis companies?
That's 100% true. Like there's so many opportunities popping up every day. And even when like ancillary opportunities in general or non-plant touching in general, there's a lot of growth happening for those opportunities, not just within the industry where you may be at, like you were mentioning, Ash, like at a plant touching company, but the work that you do doesn't really touch the plants, or maybe is in a bit of a gray area. But also as these companies get bigger, as the number of folks who are more interested and excited and willing to go into the cannabis space, there are a lot of third-party agencies who are involved in the cannabis space. So there's a lot of ancillary opportunities, including marketing, where there may be marketing agencies, we talked about staffing agencies and things like that, that may have other clients that are outside of cannabis, but they're more willing to take on cannabis clients. So that's a really good opportunity or way to start thinking about cannabis ancillary opportunities, because who knows, in 20 years, it may be that every agency or consulting group has a cannabis client. So there really can be a multitude of ways to get involved. But in terms of marketing specifically, those roles are growing each day, because also the regulations of new markets opening up, like where cannabis is being legalized on the state level. So whenever you have a new state legalized, that's an entirely new customer segment. So, that gives you an opportunity to expand your team or your reach or what you're marketing. And also, just new brands popping up every day, consumer facing brands particularly, that, obviously opens up opportunities for more marketing jobs, because as we all know as consumers, that it's hard to have a product if you're not selling it to the people who will be buying it. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities across cannabis, CBD, hemp, THC, all of it, that have to do with all levels of marketing.
Yep. What are some of the job opportunities, like the names that I should look for? I'm not a marketer.
So a lot of the jobs will it depends on what kind of company you're looking for. Like I said, there's some agencies, there can be in-house, and from what I've seen, a lot of them look very similar to what they would be in outside of the cannabis sector. I will say marketing is a little bit weird in that way, that some companies get try to be really cool and interesting, they throw out these who's ever heard of name of we want culture superstar, which is just really a social media marketer. So there's a lot of different titles out there, but for the most part, looking for marketing coordinator roles, marketing assistant, brand manager, social media manager, social media strategist, which social media roles are a little bit few and far between within cannabis, just because even within a regulated industry, social media is extremely regulated. But looking for obviously words that have marketing, brand management, social, consumer, those are a lot of the keywords or titles that you'll see in marketing related roles.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, because I feel like I would just be swimming. I'm like, what does this mean? But you're right. We do see a lot of those different, like, yeah, cultural superstar. Like, what is that supposed to mean? So it might be useful to read through the job descriptions to see, like, is this job opportunity what I think it actually is? And one of the things I feel in the industry that I'm actually seeing a lot of is marketing for cannabis ancillary companies, specifically like tech companies that provide services directly to the cannabis industry. I see there a lot, they market pretty aggressively sometimes. And so do you think there is also a boom, being a marketer for an ancillary company that's targeting the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so what I actually, one thing that I was going to add on was that a lot of things can blur into one another. So marketing, especially in that realm, can look a lot like sales. So there actually may be some roles that are really combined, especially when you're doing like business to business versus business to consumer. So when you're talking about business to consumer, that's a marketing role where you are marketing to, the end user, the person who will be consuming the cannabis, versus B2B or business to business, where you're marketing to another business to use your services or your product. And there a lot, again, there's just more businesses popping up that specialize in cannabis, but also existing companies that are more open to foraying into the cannabis sector. So those roles are happening more and more, and those usually more than the consumer facing ones or B2C ones are much more intertwined with sales.
Yep. Is that common to see, like that marketing and sales sometimes have that overlap, and someone may have like dual responsibilities for marketing and sales?
I mean, I would say it's more common than maybe some other, dual roles or combining of things. And also when we think about, cannabis is rather young and brands and companies are really scrappy. It's just a matter of, making sure you're utilizing your resources well. So there's, typically, obviously, the bigger the company, the less those roles are combined. But in that realm of like, what are you thinking about for what are your goals as a marketer when you're doing B2B? And if the goals are heavily based on like sales or how many clients you're able to bring in, it makes sense that those roles, either it's a dual role that you're in, or you're working very closely with the sales team. So yeah, I think that it's not entirely uncommon, but obviously the bigger the company, the more singular, I would say, the roles are.
Sure. And what are, I know sometimes we talk about transferable skills a little later in the presentation, but what are some of, the transferable skills specifically for marketing? If I were looking for a role in, marketing cannabis or an ancillary company for cannabis, what can I bring to what should I list on my resume as some of those transferable skills?
Yeah, so some good transferable skills to think about. If writing, marketers do a lot of copywriting or brand messaging and storytelling. So if you have experience as a writer, a journalist, or just like you're the person that your friends go to proofread their and who they send out, that's a really great skill to highlight. Again, talking about, if you have experience in a regulated sector, even if it's not cannabis related, but food and health and wellness and things like that, just that knowledge of understanding how to navigate that's a transferable skill. Also, being a people person, like understanding what people want, understanding how culture moves, that is something that is really hard to pinpoint or to like hone in on, like what
we're going to pick up where we left off. Ashley, if you want to lead us back again, please.
Yeah, so we were discussing ancillary opportunities, and we were highlighting a few of those that we had hosted sessions for last year. We were highlighting our CBD and hemp opportunities, marketing opportunities, and we are going to highlight the last opportunity that we had discussed last year, which is human resources. Of course, every company really needs a human resources department. And although, yeah, some of these opportunities might be for a plant touching business, but it is considered more of an ancillary support, because in the human resources role, regardless if you're in a plant touching company or providing ancillary services for a plant touching company, you're not generally touching the plant, but you're supporting the growth of the establishment by helping them run and hire employees and run the operation. Some of the opportunities that we might see in human resources might include training. That's one of the roles I play in the industry. I do often work with individuals in the human resource department, either human resources or compliance, but I help provide compliance training for establishments, primarily here where I am in Massachusetts. So training is one opportunity, and that can be either ancillary or actually right in the company. A lot of companies have individuals employed within the establishment to help onboard and train employees as they're hired.
And that's true across all human resources, you know, including like the staffing end of it. There's always the in-house opportunities, and then there's like companies that are ancillary, right? They provide a service to the industry without being directly in the industry itself. So sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, that's fine. I was just gonna keep going speaking. Sometimes I'm like, do I like to listen to myself speak? Because I am by nature a teacher, and sometimes, you know, when you're on that train and you just keep going. But with that said, if you are interested in a training opportunity, public speaking would be something that you would actually have to enjoy. Some of the other opportunities that we might see in human resources will be individuals responsible for hiring, posting job descriptions, posting the open jobs, interviewing candidates, reviewing resumes, and really hiring individuals for those job roles. Some of the other opportunities for human resources might be ancillary opportunities like running a staffing group. One of our partners, Danielle, she actually has a business in which she does help companies hire. She does help post job descriptions, and she will help individuals hire for different roles. Now, she's not employed per se by a cannabis company, but she does work primarily with cannabis companies to help them fulfill those roles in the industry. Sammy, did you want to add?
I was just
those opportunities.
I was thinking about transferable skills. You noted that you are by nature a teacher, so I think that's an interesting route that we don't often explore, where like if you're interested in getting into cannabis and you are currently a teacher, then perhaps your skill sets can transfer nicely here to human resources, whether that's in an ancillary capacity or within the context of the cannabis company itself. But I think that that's like a really, I love that anecdote as an example of how we want you to start thinking about what transferable skills really are, because it's much less black and white than we're normally back into thinking.
Yeah, and I think when I think of transferable skills, and really in any sector, it can be very creative, right? You can take any skill and then apply it to the role that you want. It's funny because so my background, I learned to train on the job and help to fill knowledge gaps when I was employed in a medical lab, right? And so it's really funny that I ended up, teaching compliance in the cannabis industry. And so, yeah, you have so many transferable skills that you can really, pepper your resume with to get the job that, you really want. And especially when we're talking about the industry. Another great skill for those who may be interested in some of the opportunities in human resources, maybe things like conflict resolution. Do you work really well with people to help them get through some of the challenges they might experience when in the workplace? And so if you like solving problems and really helping individuals overcome those conflicts, the human resources may be the avenue for you. Do you have an idea of some of the other opportunities we might see for those looking for a role in human resources?
Well, it might not necessarily be a different role or opportunity per se, but I know that there's a really big intersection between the tech industry and human resources, because human resources roles, human resources like service providers, folks who are working in human resources sift through a lot of data, like all the time. A huge part of this is not only like what jobs are open and what does that role entail and how much do we pay and like who has applied for these jobs, when did they quit, like all of this is data that you need to collect, that you need to consume, that you need to use for making business decisions, that you need to use to, you know, explain to your higher ups why you need to increase the cost allocated to salary, whatever the reason is. This data does need to be tracked, and our frontline folks are often human resources folks. So there's kind of like a natural bridge that you can build over that gap between the two, right? Tech can be the bridge to accumulating, storing, and then analyzing the data in the way that's useful for you. So if you're somebody with like a tech background, an ancillary opportunity for you might be in creating software for cannabis human resources firms. I don't know, just off the top of my head, being creative.
No, that is like such a legitimate point right there. And I was actually talking to a client the other day who said that, you know, some of these traditional software companies that provide support for human resources actually don't want to don't want to be involved with the cannabis industry. So yes, there is the need for more software that helps cannabis companies manage that data, you know, manage the life cycle of an employee from onboarding to when they might be let go or terminated. So that whole life cycle management of an employee's time there. But it's really challenging for cannabis companies to currently find HR service providers that offer this technology, because if they're a cannabis company, sometimes the traditional companies don't want to actually work with them. So there are tech companies that do provide human resources software or technology specifically for the cannabis industry. So those are opportunities that exist. And they're a little few and far between right now. So now's the best time, especially if you're innovative. It's a time to get into that tech aspect of that HR support. Yeah, that's a great point there, Sammy. Some of those tech companies, you might actually be submitting resumes or actually sifting through job opportunities that are posted on those companies. Finding jobs and applying for jobs, this can be a little challenging in the industry. You do see a lot of jobs posted on your traditional sites, things like Indeed, but you really want to...
page.
Oh, yes, the CannaCareers page. We do have a job board, and we're always trying to, thoroughly vet companies to ensure that the jobs posted are safe for individuals, primarily those underrepresented in the industry currently. But we do want to be mindful when looking through those different job opportunities, just to take time to read the job descriptions. You want to be fully aware of what you're signing up for. And there's not too much consistency between company to company because it is such a new industry. So you want to be make sure you take your time to read through the actual job description. A cultivator's role, for a CBD company for one company might look completely different at another company. So you do want to just take your time to read through those job postings.
I'd also like to note that even though the cannabis industry jobs and job opportunities can get kind of drowned out on these big national job board websites, there are specific places that you can go that are cannabis focused, A, and B, if you're not finding enough job opportunities that speak to you there, your other opportunity to be creative is by networking, by going to events and asking people, hey, are you hiring? Is anybody you know hiring? Having that ability to take that first step and to initiate instead of reacting and passively searching will probably help a lot. And if you don't want to do that in person because like obviously pandemic, you can do that on LinkedIn. You can find your top 5 cannabis companies in the sector that you think you'd be best in and DM them directly, message them directly. It's like cold calling, but like 2022.
And Muna, do you have any insight on finding these job opportunities? Where do you find your job postings? And if
I mean, I would just second what Sammy said is, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to send an email to a company that if you just do a quick search, whether that's LinkedIn and Google on some trusted websites like the Woken CannaCareers job board, and you don't see something that's a right fit for you, don't be afraid to reach out, send an email, even if it's like your info at. Just make sure your subject line is straightforward and clear so that they know when it can be opened, and say, do you have any opportunities? This is my skill set. Here's what I'm looking for. And that'll be a good way for you to keep up to date with what opportunities are available.
Yep, and if just wanted to pull up, this is the CannaCareers website, and if you are looking for a job, you can scroll down, select apply for a job, and look at these different job roles that may be available. So we are starting to populate different job opportunities, and we do want to be a resource when you are looking for a potential role in the industry. You may look at our CannaCareers job board. So we do have a few opportunities available, and hopefully after this session, you'll be able to just kind of take a peek and see what those opportunities are. And I'm just going to pull back up that presentation on. All right, once they find a job opportunity, and we're thinking about, submitting a resume and applying for that job, obviously we always talk about our transferable skills and keywords. And I know we alluded to this previously, but how do we tailor a resume, and how do we use transferable skills and keywords on the resume to really, sell that person that, hey, we are the right fit for that job role?
Well, I think number one, thoughtfulness. Do it thoughtfully. Like, don't just right click synonym this. You don't want to just randomly pepper in keywords to make sure that your resume and your cover letter are filled with them. You want to place them thoughtfully so that they're telling a story. Your cover letter is the place where you get to explain who you are. So who you are on your resume, what you have on paper, your list of accomplishments at each job and responsibilities at each job and how long you were there for. That stuff's great, but it's not the whole picture of who you are. Your cover letter is the opportunity to, let's say there's gaps in your resume, you can explain why that is in your cover letter. You can explain with, a brief journey through your skill set and experience why you're the best fit for your job. That's a good place to include keywords. You can specifically state why you think that a skill that you have that doesn't necessarily look related to the job you're applying for actually is related, how that's a transferable skill. So that's what I use the cover letter for. In terms of, your resume. We go over this almost every single time that we have a CannaCareers session because it's really, really important. And I know that it seems like a lot of extra work, but tailoring each resume and cover letter for the specific job for which you're applying is a huge leg up. It's really important. And that's kind of what I mean by thoughtful.
Yeah. Just a couple of recommendations or tips for your resume that really apply for any job or any resume that you're submitting. These bullet points I think are really important, but to take it further, I would say first and foremost, I know there's back and forth about this, but truly keeping your resume to one page. I like to say 1 page for every 10 years of experience. So if you want to do a 2-page resume, sure. If you have 20 years worth of experience that you can't, cool down, go ahead. But even then, I still think that it's really powerful to show that you can communicate your skill set and what your experiences are in one page. The second, of using keywords. In order to use keywords in a way that's helpful for you is understanding how a recruiter or an HR director will be looking at your resume. The rule of thumb I like to say is that they'll probably glance at your resume for anywhere from 8 to 15 seconds. So if they look at your resume for 15 seconds, what do you want them to take away? So if you have a lot of superfluous information or things that like don't make you look the best and brightest, or maybe aren't relevant to what you're doing, take those things out and replace them with keywords that are relevant to the job, the industry, or to the company. And then at the end of the day, this is the one mistake I see a lot of folks make when building their resumes, that they feel that their resume, the job of their resume, is to make them look qualified for the role. That's not the case. First and foremost, if you're applying for the job, it can be reasonably assumed that you and the company both know you're qualified. The job of your resume is to make you look the best option, the most impressive option for the role. So don't necessarily list out like all of your achievements, pick out the most impressive ones. Not every role you've been in, but the ones that really shine through and make you the best candidate for the role. And use the resume as a leverage to say, look how great I am, look what I've done, and look what I could do for you. Don't necessarily, like, this is not a time to hold back or to be shy or to, try to be humble. To really use your resume as a tool with leverage for showing why you're the perfect fit and why you have everything that it takes to be the best candidate.
That is really terrific advice, Muna. And just to go back to the keywords, just for one moment, a great place to get the keywords are actually from the job description themselves. Muna, you did say that we should keep our resumes to one page. Do you think that we might be able to highlight some of the other information that we wanted to include on the resume, but we excluded on the resume just to keep it to that one page? Can we include that information in our cover letter? Would that be a great place or an appropriate place to include that?
Actually, that's the perfect place to look, that they'll be looking for that information. Because really, you don't want to put what is, if you have bullet points in your resume, you don't want the paragraph version of the cover letter. That's redundant. Again, everything is leveraged to show them how great you are. So using the cover letter to show the more esoteric or more niche things, or even things that may not be as easily communicated in a bullet point or just, a percentage, but use the cover letter's format of paragraphs to tell that story. And also, this is where even more than the resume, it needs to be tailored to the company and the role. That will make a world of a difference. When you think about, you may have applied to 10 different jobs, but I guarantee you the HR director has looked through 100 applications. They can spot a generic template every time. So use your own story to your advantage and weave it in to what the company is looking for and what the role is.
And do we know of any resources that we might have to help individuals with their resumes and their cover letters?
We do, actually. I love the shameless plugging. So CannaCareers offers a service called Office Hours. Our Office Hours are free resume review services, especially, of course, prioritizing folks in marginalized communities. Our partner, Danielle at THC Staffing, as well as another HR professional, Amber, are our two lead resume reviewers. If you visit our website at woke.world/CannaCareers and scroll to Office Hours, you will be able to apply for a resume review session. The resume review sessions are about 30 minutes long, and you need to come prepared, guys. You need to come prepared with a resume and a cover letter, please. When you're joining us, you can either apply for just an email review, so somebody will respond to your application with a review and some suggestions for your resume and cover letter, or you can request actual in-person office hours, which are the 30-minute review sessions.
Terrific. Yes, because it does sound like looking for a job, writing the resume and the cover letter, is work. And
it is intimidating. I'm not gonna gloss over that. I hate cover letters. I absolutely hate cover letters. So don't don't think you're alone in that. Like it's really scary and a lot of work that's nerve-wracking. So yeah, that's not lost on me or any of us at all.
Nope. I have to get help every single time that I have to send in a cover letter and resume. Like just another couple pairs of eyes, a professional pair of eyes to help, you know?
Yeah, but Muna, the advice that you offered is just invaluable. And really it's like a very thorough perspective on like the resume and the cover letter and what the actual reviewer may want to see. And Muna, your insight has been so valuable. We are running towards 3:07 now, so we're going to start to wrap up. But we want to ask if anybody has any questions, please ask us anything. And
for those of you joining us on social media, feel free to share those questions as well. We'll be able to answer them here. So sorry, Ashley, please continue.
Oh no, I was just waiting. I'm just waiting for some questions, but I just wanted to really highlight Muna, and I mean, I'd probably ask you a few resume and cover letter questions. And so while we're waiting for any questions, and we have a few more moments, I do want to ask, just going back to the resume and the use of keywords. I'm not sure if you have any insight about, really the importance of keywords, if it's actually not a person reading the resume, but if it's technology scanning the resume.
So that's actually where it becomes extremely important. Also to know, to think about with resumes is that like as much as you want to have a beautiful resume, for the technology that's scanning it, first of all, they'll take away all of that. In fact, it may even mess up the formatting. And two, it's not a human, it's technology. They don't care if it looks beautiful. So choosing a good font and a good format that can be read through those scanners. And really, they're on the back end from the HR side or the company side. They select keywords that the technology they're using is scanning for. A lot of those words will appear in the job description. So using that language and organically weaving it in will help. And a way to think about it is like a percent match, because if they scan it and it says like 20% match with our keywords, that's less strong of a resume to this technology than let's say an 80% match with the keywords they're looking for. So when you're thinking about your resume, first of all, look at what the application is, because some is submit via email and some is submit via an online form. And if it's an online form, it's safe to say that there's some type of tech that's going to be used. So that's where it becomes extremely important, because truly they're setting up a system that's reading and scanning for specific words. They're not reading it word for word, as in sentences or paragraphs.
Yes, thank you. And you mentioned something that just kind of caught my attention, but the formatting. Do you have like a recommended format that we should submit resumes, like a Word doc versus a PDF?
Well, always submit a PDF. A Word doc, it'll get destroyed, or like all the work that you put in to make it look easy to read and to showcase your skills will get undone, or at least it's very likely that it will be. So a PDF is really important. And this is where I'm a little bit different from most, and that's because my background is in marketing and beauty and fashion in that realm of it. So the biggest thing is that if you're doing it through the online form where they're asking you to submit it to be read through the scanner, like as basic and as simple as possible, because that's what they're going to be looking for. But if you're going to be reviewing it or sending it in via email, making sure that the font is easy to read. If you're struggling to get it down to one page, that is not the time to make it 8-point font and minimize your spacing, because it's going to be hard to read and they're just going to move on to the next. So make it readable for human, and also for fashion and beauty. I tend to like something that's a little bit like flashy, and I say flashy as in like, at the top with your name, if you want to put that in like a color that's, more you, like a deep purple or a dark blue, something like that. Just something small, but for a human that's looking through hundreds of resumes, it'll stand out. With that being said, don't go too far. Script fonts first of all, can't be read by tech and don't like to be read by humans. And photos or images, if you're using like icons to describe like your Instagram handle or things like that, yes, but beyond that, avoid icons and photos in your resume. The Canva's great, but a lot of the Canva templates aren't designed or optimized for the job market, the job markets where they're using tech or going through hundreds of resumes.
Thank you for that, Muna. And I want to say thank you to Ashley for sharing this wonderful session. We've gotten a lot of really great gems today. I'm actually really excited to parse these out into little videos we'll use later. So thank you to both of you for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your experience. Before we leave, I wanted to quickly plug our page one last time. Our Woke CannaCareers page is at wocc.world/CannaCareers, and when you visit us on that page, you'll be able to scroll down and sort of see what we have to offer, which includes not only the upcoming modules, our next module being March 12th, and about sales opportunities in cannabis, but also our past sessions. We keep them recorded and up at all times for free for you guys to view. You'll be able to see the entire video of the past session, as well as access any presentation or additional materials that were used. We also have, as we mentioned before, our job board, our office hours resume reviewing service, and we are adding new external services that we think would be useful for cannabis employment all the time. Yeah, with that being said, I want to thank everybody again for joining us on a Saturday and giving us your time. Thanks again to our speakers, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thank you for having me.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Oh my God.